All right, you are now live.
Okay, thank you. So good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to call our meeting to order with our usual acknowledgement that the HRM is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and the traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaties signed in this territory and recognizes that we're all treaty people. So just to kind of do our roll call, we have with us Councillor Pam Lovelace is going to join us a little bit later. Hannah Jackson's here. Sonia's here. Yes, there you are, Sonia. Liz is here. And I think we're good. And we have some staff members. Oh, I'm sorry. We received regrets from Councillor Becky Kent, from Maggie Howe, and from Jackie Gahagan. So we also have some support staff here with us. We have Elizabeth McDonald, our legislative assistant. Amy Brierley is here, and Bailey Brown's here. Lindsay Mullen, do we have Lindsay with us?
Lindsay just is trying to rejoin the meeting right now.
Okay.
And Councillor Lovelace has joined. I am just renaming her.
We'll just wait for a minute for Councillor Lovelace.
Thank you. I'm here, Madam Chair, just on my phone. I'll be visual shortly, as soon as I get to my office.
Okay.
Beautiful.
One of the things, I know that Councillor Lovelace wants to speak to, hi Lindsay, there she is, wants to speak to the approval of the minutes. So I'm just going to wait a minute until Councillor Lovelace is in her office and ready to go.
So I can speak to that now.
Oh, you
Madam
can speak
Chair,
to it? Oh, well, excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So we're there, we've called the meeting to order?
Yes, we have.
Yeah.
Yes,
okay,
great.
We are.
My apologies for being late. So I did just want to make an amendment to the order of business to actually defer our minutes for approval for the last meeting until the next meeting, if that's possible, Madam Chair, just to address some inconsistencies within the minutes.
Okay, I believe that's possible. So you're moving that we defer the approval of the October minutes until the December meeting. Is that correct?
Yes, I'd appreciate that, please.
Okay. And is somebody willing to second that motion? Hannah is willing to second that.
Oh, great. Thank you, Hannah.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye or waving your hand, one or the other. I see some hands. I hear some ayes. Any opposed? The motion's carried. So the minutes are deferred to the December meeting. The next is that in front of you, there's approval of the order of business and approval of additions or deletions. And again, Councillor Lovelace, you're really busy here because I see that you're wanting to make an addition to the agenda. She's still there?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Madam Chair. I do want to add a note. I believe I sent it to the clerk.
Yep.
So this is just an added item.
Yeah. So we need to have a motion to approve the agenda. I think as it was circulated, Elizabeth, was this added item on the agenda that was circulated?
So this item was added to the revised agenda, which was circulated, and the added item is 10.1.1, and the title is Councillor Lovelace Canada Contribution Rebate Program.
Okay. So I'm looking for a motion to accept the order of business as the revised order of business that was circulated recently. Liz is going to make that motion. Anybody able to second that?
I can.
Sonia, are you seconding it?
Seconded by Hannah. Or is that Sonia?
Sonia.
Okay, Sonia, perfect.
And all those in favor indicate by waving your hand or saying aye. I see some hands and some ayes. Okay, motion is carried. Business arising out of the minutes, if there is none. So that brings us to the declaration of conflicts of interest. You've seen the agenda, you know what's going to be addressed. Is there anyone who wishes to declare a conflict of interest? None. And we will move on to item 6, which is deferred business. And to my knowledge, there is none. So that takes us to item 7, correspondence, petitions, and delegations. Elizabeth, is there any correspondence or petitions or presentations?
No correspondence or petitions has been received by the clerk's office.
Okay, so actually there is a presentation which takes us to Joe Napier's presentation, and I think she's here with us. She's going to turn on her camera. So Joe Napier, as you learned when I sent an email the other day, is an artist here in Halifax, and she's the founder of the Great Women Portrait Project. And her mission, current mission, she's a multifaceted person, and I've been lucky to have got to know her well over the last year or so. And so I think she can add to her list motivational speaker. But she does a variety of things. And one of the things she did for me, as I've said to many people, is that I've been involved in women's issues for many, many, many years, more than most of you have been born. And until I met Joe and I started to learn about portraits of women in public places, I never gave any thought to the fact that women are underrepresented in these public spaces visually. And so that's kind of the impetus of Joe's work. But I'll turn it over to Joe and let you have the floor, and we'll have questions when you're finished. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Jane. Hi, everybody. I wanted to tell you about the project, but I just want to introduce myself first. So I'm born and raised in Halifax. Before King's had a journalism school, I wanted to be a journalist, and so I started off in the Halifax Herald newsroom and worked my way up from the library to Parliament Hill. And it took me a long time to realize I was engaged unconsciously by the idea that all the great beat jobs were held by guys. And so I have 3 brothers, no sisters. And I think I unconsciously just started to compete, like try to get the job that never went to a girl or a woman before. And so as my consciousness kind of developed, it slowly occurred to me that I was taking on, down the road after as a journalist, taking on, for instance, contracts to say, go down to Province House and itemize all the artwork down there, and for kind of a big federal project, different things like that. And I slowly started to realize, I'm walking by this huge statue of Samuel Kennard on the waterfront. I'm walking by Winston Churchill on the way to, work. I'm walking, like, all our imagery, not all our imagery, but so much of our imagery is male. And I just never really thought about it until I was a mom. When I was a reporter, I was just too busy, doing the job. But when I became a mom, I realized that I really wanted my daughter to know about great women of Nova Scotia. And I'd spent 10 years in the Herald newsroom. As I mentioned, I, kind of worked my way up. So I had lots of opportunity to meet and know of great women. And I just didn't know of any great historic women. I mean, I knew Alexa McDonough. I knew some wonderful, great living women, and on the Hill and in the Ledge and City Council and so on, but no historic figures. So I didn't know the path that women had paved. That was a powerful path. And because I was kind of stuck at home with a little one, I thought, I'm going to research them. And the penny dropped, and I started to realize these are amazing women, not just Nova Scotian women, not just Halifax women. Like, you can pick a geographic neighborhood, and if you've got the time and energy to drill down on the great women who shaped that world, whatever size it is, wherever you're from, Amy specifically, or Liv, or Lindsay, you know what I mean? Like, we just don't know our history, and we're too busy kind of running our own lives to dig down into it. So I was home and I had the time to do that. So I thought I'm going to create I'd taken a painting course. I'm going to create a collection of paintings about the great women of Nova Scotia. And Elizabeth, can you put up one of the images? I think the very first one I did
I'm just going to share my screen right now.
was anyway, it was Mabel Bell. She'll pop up. But so this is just a little capture of the project itself. And there's Mabel Bell. So I just wanted to sort of say that years ago, I started this painting of Alexander Graham Bell because we all know him as such a significant figure. And it wasn't until I started to, like, I left a note for the reference librarian at the old Halifax Library and said, I want to do a project, Great Women of Nova Scotia. Who are the great women? They ended up giving me a list of 25 great women. I'd never heard of any of them. Black, Mi'kmaq, white, all kinds of, whole sort of diverse mix. I thought this is fascinating. So I ended up doing this painting, one of the first ones I did for that collection. And because Mabel Bell, Alexander Graham Bell couldn't have done, the inventor of the telephone, this amazing genius, he couldn't have literally kept it together if it wasn't for Mabel. She was the first woman to run an aviation company in the world. She's the reason he patented. She was his, romantic muse. She was his financial backer. She was his business agent. Like she made him happen. He had all the great ideas, but she did all the kind of really important steps that brought that to impact. So I just use this as an example of how I think it's just shocking and exciting that half our history is not known. So I've undertaken this project and Elizabeth, feel free to show some of the other images that were part of that first painting collection, and I'll mention as you go along. So that's Nova Scotia 9. I ended up painting Eileen Marr, who back in the days when women weren't allowed to run on the street, certainly couldn't buy workout gear. She cut off her brother's shorts, started running in that graveyard by Camp Hill, and ended up going to the Olympics. She'd never even heard of the Olympics. She ended up becoming like at the Berlin Olympics, this medal winner came home to the Halifax airport, nobody there but a reporter from the Herald to greet her. Like very much sort of stories that I don't think you know about. I didn't know about anyway. The next woman, Muriel Duckworth, very much a leader in the political and activist realm, an activist for peace, big time, way before that was a phrase that we use very much in our consciousness. Viola Desmond, who I did in kind of a pop art kind of way. I got to be good friends with her sister Wanda as a result. What's the next image?
Next one is
the booklet?
the Nova
So
Scotia 9 booklet.
I was just going to say how, one step leads to another. So I had the idea for the paintings. I ended up doing the paintings. I showed them at the archives across from, just at the entrance to Dow by the, on Robie Street by the fire station there. And the men who came were kind of interested, thought it was nice, but the women who came left all these really powerful notes saying, please, keep this as an exhibit, have it travel around. Could it somehow be integrated into the schools, that kind of thing. It was just a very strong voice that came from a whole range of like little girls to visiting academics to, everybody in between, but all female who responded to it. And the government ended up producing this. It's actually a really nice book. And you have to get it through the Nova Scotia Advisory Council now, I think, but it'd be kind of nice if it was, I don't know how that would happen, circulated a little more broadly because the great women are in there. So what happened next was my daughter got a little older. She wanted to clean out our closet and turn it into a chemistry lab. And again, I thought, who are the great women of chemistry and science? I didn't know them. I went on another research dig and ended up doing a couple of exhibits of great women of STEM, which again had a really strong response from women. So Jane McKay Nesbitt, you may have heard of her, had a very good idea, which was for me to gather some women together in the boardroom at RBC, which the Royal Bank had purchased the paintings, and they were hanging in this boardroom, and they look fantastic in this boardroom. They're down in Purdy's Wharf, Tower 1, but not many people get to see them. So on Jane's encouragement and Alyssa's encouragement, a mutual friend, I stepped up and started to organize a couple of meetings around the idea of a project I wanted to do, which launched this year and is called the Great Women Portrait Project. And it gives women a chance to use portrait art as a diversity and inclusion tool. It shows, so in other words, you can pick a woman that you want to honor who is a historic figure. And in STEM, it very much underscores the historic power of including a woman in the workplace, of the power of diversity to contribute to problem solving in the world in the STEM fields. So I think it's really important for the next generation of girls and boys to know the powerful paths that women have paved, particularly in STEM, because we need all our problem solvers very much at the table right now. This project launched in March on International Women's Day and wrapped in October on International Day of the Girl. And I'm going to run it every year according to that schedule. So I guess I've got lots more that I could tell you, but I think I wanted to just play a little 1-minute video so that's not just me blah blahing. And you get the sense of the why behind the project. And then if you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I just want to mention, this is Alice Augusta Ball. She came up with the first effective treatment for leprosy. So back in the day when leprosy was a thing, you could just get hauled out of your house and thrown onto, an island near Hawaii if you lived around where she lived. No forewarning, and you were stuck there for the rest of your life. There were no treatments. She ended up dying at the age of 23 or 24 on New Year's Eve. And the chap who ran the university took credit for her work and her invention. But perfect example of a young Black woman chemist who did something incredibly significant in terms of laying a path in STEM. So imagine if you're a young girl and want to look to your idols. Alice Augusta Ball is somebody you should know about. You should have her poster on the wall. You should be interested in Googling her and digging down into her story, because it's your story too. It's your female history. Elizabeth, is there another great woman of STEM there? So this is Hertha Ayrton. She's a fantastic physicist. She had 25 patents. She did, you could Google the Ayrton fan and find a 30-second clip of men during World War I in the trenches. And when the mustard gas was being pumped into the trenches to attack their lungs by the Germans, she invented the fan that the men could bring into the trenches that would just kind of sweep the mustard gas away. A lot of these women, she did all kinds of other things beyond that, but I just think that's interesting that you can still find a little clip about that. Here's another great woman of STEM. This is kind of one I did for a children's session, just kind of trying to teach them about pointillism, just using points of color as opposed to blending color. And this is Gertrude Elion, who as a young girl, her grandfather died of cancer. She saw him die and it really, affected her. And her fiance died of cancer. And she just decided, you know what? Okay, I don't think I'm meant to marry. I think I'm meant to devote my life to trying to find a cure for cancer. She was a fantastic chemist. During the war, she got a break and she got, got a lab job, and she ended up winning the Nobel, co-sharing with the man who invited her into the lab, the Nobel Prize for Medicine, because they came up with the first treatment for childhood leukemia. So kind of a big deal. Trudy Elion, never heard of her before. There's a huge pharmaceutical company now called GSK, GlaxoSmithKline. Trudy and the man she shared the prize with, whose name I'm not going to come up with right now, they're the pioneers of that company. They change the way that drugs are developed. It's an amazing story. So my point being, STEM is very much women's work. It's always been women's work. But because we don't know half our history, because men have been the record keepers, it's just kind of the way it was. It wasn't some evil plan, I don't think. But it's half our history. We don't know it. And the fact that we particularly don't know our history in science, technology, engineering, and math, I think is a really serious omission. And it's also a very big opportunity. I can't remember what else I sent along there. Elizabeth Mann Borghese, she's the mother of the oceans. She was the first person to come up with the idea to be an activist to protect the oceans. She ended up being a co-architect of the United Nations Law of the Sea treaties, and she actually taught at Dow. And Elsie McGill, who was the first female aircraft designer and a hero of World War II, a great woman to Google. And her mother also. If you get into Elsie McGill, you'll find out about her mother, but I'll leave it for you to dig if you're interested. And anybody else there? Oh, Marie Curie, who's always the first person and sometimes the only woman we think of when we think of a great woman of STEM. And Annie Jump Cannon, who classified the first 400,000 stars and came up with the mnemonic code, I'll call it, that's still used today by astronomers for classifying the light emitted from the stars. And this, I just wanted to wrap here, I think. Jane, you'll recognize this. This was our October 11th wrap party for the first year of the Great Women Portrait Project, and a number of the portraits that were commissioned by either individual women or groups of women, so that they could share the price of commissioning a portrait. And then at the event, they spoke about, I invited them to speak about, why did you pick this woman to honor? You know, who is she? And what did she do? And where are you going to hang her portrait? So all these different portraits are now going out into the world to be hung in various locations. So as different as the one on the left, Muriel Sparks, she's now hanging in the offices in a boardroom of an investment firm. And the woman on the right, Dr. Jenny Smiley, she is now hanging in the OBGYN waiting room in the Dixon Center. And there is Jenny being hung by somebody Jane will recognize on the left. I just love that shot. And that's probably about it. I was going to show you one little thing. Or two little things very quickly.
You want me to play that video?
Oh, sure.
Joe?
Can you wait half a second and then play it?
Yeah, sorry. Yep.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Two of the women, I figured I couldn't get this project rolling unless I asked kind of big shot women to come on board. So the first woman I asked to come on board, by big shot, I mean, you know, iconic women who are feminist in their thinking and not afraid to carve a fresh path. So the first woman I invited was Poppy Northcott, who came on board and did a fabulous video, right, Jane, for our meeting. She was the first woman in mission control for NASA. And the next woman I invited on board was the Canadian head of the head of the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, Rumina Velshi. She just retired. Now she's traveling around the world and accepting prizes. And anyway, Rumina called me from Vienna and said that she wanted me to do a portrait of Harriet Brooks. And I said, who's Harriet Brooks? And she said, exactly. So this is Harriet Brooks. And she was Canada's Marie Curie. She was our first female physicist. And she did amazing things. And Rumina got together 4 female CEOs. They commissioned this portrait and 30 prints of the portrait, which were then disseminated. Is it disseminated? Disseminated, sent to CEOs in the energy industry, with the caveat that here's the portrait, please hang it on International Day of the Girl, because that's, you know, it's now in our calendars to acknowledge International Women's Day and International Day of the Girl. But the behavioral science that I've studied shows very much that, you know, we put our money around diversity and inclusion into training workshops and things like that, but it's a little bit questionable what the evidence is in terms of how effective these things are. But there is all kinds of evidence that shows if you hang a portrait of a woman in a boardroom or a hallway or an office and educate people and just share their story and bring it into people's consciousness, it changes mindsets. You know, it certainly changed mine. Jane always says it changed hers. I get that. And I would really like to ask everybody in this meeting today they always tell me in my business class that there should be an ask at the end, at the end of a business meeting. So my ask would be, if you could think about one woman who you think might want to participate in this project, either by commissioning a portrait or by getting a set of prints, and that could I'm making now a set of prints of the Nova Scotia 9 collection that are in the boardroom, and I'm making sets of prints of the women of STEM, so that you don't always have to commission an original portrait. You can commission, a set of prints. I'm going to create a little page where you can kind of pick the women that you like. And then you could create like a little gallery of prints, in an office, in a boardroom, in a hallway. So it's not just one lonely portrait, so that these women can, in another dimension, come together yet again to do some more good work. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And and I asked Elizabeth if she would kindly play just this little 1-minute video that I put together that sometimes I show at schools, and thought you might want to see it.
All right, I think that should be full
Does-
screen.
Should have a little music or something in the background. The music's not there, but you'll still get the idea. That's it. Thank you, Jane. Thanks for the opportunity to share some information about the project. And thank you, Elizabeth, for helping me.
Yeah, well, thank you, Joe. So I'll just let our members ask questions and make comments. So let's start. Where we're going to start. Pam, Councillor Lovelace, would you like to start?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Great to see everybody. Joe, that was fantastic. Just awesome. I think you and I actually worked together with Mary Elizabeth Luca back at CBC doing a couple of projects.
Okay.
Or at NASCAD, but really, really thrilled that you're doing this project. And I wish I was there on October the 11th. That would have been fantastic. I do want to say that we've just had an incredible gift to Mount St. Vincent University from Honorable Margaret Murray McCain towards the 150th anniversary of that university. Might be kind of cool to check with Margaret to see if she would want to be acknowledged. The amount of time that she has spent over the years dedicated towards early childhood education and childhood food poverty in particular has been quite significant. So I would recommend that. I'd also recommend that we get your book in the central library system. That would be fantastic. And, I think having, having women with such incredible, well, not, most of them had gone to university, and they were going to university at a time when women were not typically permitted to go to university. Ma Bell, she was a little different in how she saw the world, obviously, and where she gained her wisdom from. But for the most part, you're looking at women who were very privileged to be able to go to university, at a time when there were no universities for women. I mean, obviously, Mount St. Vincent was one of those schools. But I want to sort of focus on the issue that you raised, which is the lack of visibility of these incredible women. And just this week, we had the opportunity to rename and have a public ceremony for the former Cornwallis Street and rename that to North Bernard Street. That's a really small, it's a big deal, but it's a really fraction of the women who have made incredible impacts to us in Nova Scotia. We have a lot of opportunity to be able to recognize those women. I saw you showed the picture of the sculpture of Ruth Goldblum. And I think that's the only sculpture we have of a woman in our city. I loved Ruth. She was a beautiful, wonderful, caring woman. But we also know that the history of the Women's Council House in Halifax has seen a lot of women, supported a lot of women over the last century and a bit. So I think that you're on to something here where we really need to continue to dig and support the work that you're doing and ensure that we do name these women and that we do tell their story, find a way to get the information, because that's the other thing we don't have, especially for politicians. Women in politics was looked down on. We do not have the history. We don't have the details of a lot of those early women politicians, especially in considering, women who were on council pre-war, right? We don't have their story, and we've lost the opportunity to kind of pull that together. So, I really do appreciate that. And shortly after joining council, we do have parity on council, and we did have the opportunity to put together a webpage on halifax.ca, which outlines all of the women who were elected throughout the history of Halifax County, town of Bedford, city of Halifax, city of Dartmouth, which is wonderful. So I would also suggest that you have a look at that, because there are some trailblazers there, so it'd be good to review those women. But I want to thank you for your presentation today and the work that you're doing. Keep it up.
Thank you.
Thanks. Hannah, how about you? What would you like to?
Yeah, this is an awesome project. Well done. I commend you on researching this because it's important. I have a question. How do you pick the women that you paint? Do you have a process that you follow, or how?
So for that first collection, I went to the reference room of the whole library and left a note and said, could you give some thought to historic great women of Nova Scotia? And that's when they sent me back this list, and I realized, okay, there's a real problem here. I vaguely knew who Rita Jo was. I think she's Mi'kmaq writer or an artist, so with the women of STEM, honestly, Hannah, I could spend, and probably will spend, the rest of my life painting them, because my house is just filled with books and books and books of these women. It's half our history, and it's now being published in books. But I just think it's really, this isn't quite answering your question, but I just think it's really important to start somewhere. We don't need a perfect beginning, and I approach things as a journalist. So I pick women who really interest me in terms of their story, and how do I say this grammatically correctly, and who, women who I can find a really good source image of, because it's not going to be a good portrait if it's not a good, image to work from. And I need that source image, and I need that source information. So, Rumina was able to send me just a great picture of Harriet. And, honestly, I go down to UPS on Queen Street, and I print out a source image 11 by 17, and then I put it up in the kitchen, I'll put it up in the bathroom. I literally wait until I sort of feel like they're in my life and I'm kind of talking to them, which sounds a little crazy, but I think art is a little bit, requires you to kind of color outside the lines emotionally and creatively. And so I pick them because I feel like I'm coming into connection with them. And, you know, and I really respond to them from I think the story is a big piece of it, you know?
Absolutely. Thank
So
you.
I'd look for something like, say you and I were having a coffee and afterwards you said you want to participate in the project, but you didn't know where to begin. You and I just getting to know each other. You know, it might be something about where your grandmother came from, who said something to you that inspired you to go down your particular path that would make me want to go and start to research women in that area, geographic area, or, you know, start just to kind of pull threads that I feel are really resonate either with me or with Jane or with you or somebody I've talked to. That's what I do. I just start there, pretty organic.
Cool. Thank you.
Can I just speak to this too, Hannah? Because I was part of a group that commissioned a portrait, a small portrait, that was unveiled at the October 11th event. We picked Doris Anderson. And I don't know if you know who Doris Anderson was, but she was the editor of the Chatelaine magazine in Canada. And women's magazines were typically undervalued and looked at as like not serious journalism. But in fact, there were a tremendous journalistic presence. And she had a tremendous impact on women's lives because she was a strong feminist and wrote about feminist issues and was involved in ensuring that women's rights were enshrined in the Charter of Rights. So she had a huge impact on the lives of women in Canada. The other thing, Joe, I don't know if you made clear that Joe is painting portraits of women who are deceased. Maybe you want to, rather than women who are currently alive.
I do sometimes do commissions.
Okay.
But I kind of, my thought process is, if you're alive, you can market yourself. I'm trying to sort of cover that gap that none of the history books covered and so on. So, I mean, I think Pam's idea is fantastic about it, you know, and that would be great. It's just, it's not anything I'd rule out. It's just not the thread of this project, you know. I really think there's a sense of urgency of sort of trying to get these women out there.
Okay.
And I wanted to mention just, I think somebody here is on your diversity and inclusion committee. Is that right?
We're staff members.
Staff members.
Yeah.
One of the problems I have with the project so far is that a lot of the women who were educated historically were white. So, you know, a lot of the women in STEM tended to be the sort of somewhat privileged, right? And so I'm trying to make sure that I have a diverse population represented in the project. So, you know, I love the fact that Alice Augusta Ball is part of it and that Rita Joe is part of it. But you know, I'm always looking for suggestions of great women, and I'd like them to come from, you know, as far afield as is appropriate, and I'd like them to, you know, be a diverse population that's represented in the portraits.
Okay. Sonia, do you have some questions or comments?
No questions. I think it's a good work that you're doing, Joe, and I appreciate the story you're telling, especially for the women who can't market themselves right now. Yes, but no questions from me. And thanks for the presentation. I really enjoyed it. I'm looking at your work online and it looks great. Well done.
Oh, thank you.
Liz, how about you? Anything you'd like to?
Oh, Jane, you know I have something I'd like to say. Thank you so much for the presentation, Joe. Your work is just absolutely beautiful, and thank you for sharing it with us. I was really struck in the video you showed by the question, what if we weren't told half our history? Because I actually think it's a lot more than half, because I'm sort of struck always when we talk about great women, I'm struck always, and you touched on this in your last remark about, you know, wanting to find great women who didn't come from a privileged background that allowed them to insert themselves into traditionally male, traditionally privileged, traditionally white spaces. And I think it's really interesting because when we talk about great women, we do talk about women who have managed to achieve success by the lights of the people in charge, success almost in imitation of men, success in imitation of whiteness, success by the light of a society that wasn't designed for them. And that is certainly greatness, like to succeed against the odds, there's no question. But I think we often miss too what it would be like if we thought about greatness, a woman who is great on women's terms. Like, for example, we talk about chemistry, and when we talk about greatness in chemistry, we talk about going into a lab and manipulating chemicals in accordance with the scientific method, which is like a very particular way of doing science. We don't think about the fact that the only activity that humans do that other animals don't do is cooking. It's the one and only thing. And when we look at the anthropological record, it's the thing that's basically tied to our brain size. We don't develop these big, cool brains until we start burning our food and seeing what happens. Baking, as anyone who's ever tried to make muffins and not succeeded knows very well, is chemistry. And for a long time, when my muffins fall flat, they fall flat with the benefits of all kinds of modern technology. Like, for a long time, baking and cooking, which rely on the principles of chemistry and physics, and were done with very rudimentary equipment in not very good conditions, were done in the home by women all the time. And that underpins the success of our species. And we just forget about it because we just expect women to do stuff. Like, of course, why shouldn't you perform a minor miracle all day, every day? You make human beings out of your body. What's the big deal? So I think we actually miss like an enormous piece of our history when we accept those definitions of STEM, for example. Like, is knitting technology? Is being able to, use two sticks to turn a piece of thread into a sweater? Is that a use of technology? I would argue that it absolutely is. When we talk about the history of medicine, for example, we often talk about the history of gynecology, and we very rarely talk about the history of midwifery. It's just like my little bugbear, as everyone knows. And even more than that, when we talk about the history of medicine, especially on this land, we don't talk about the fact that there have been technologically advanced processes of medicine and of ways of knowing about health and of ways of using chemistry to harvest the appropriate plants, use them in the appropriate dosages to cure illness for thousands and thousands of years, right here before there were any settlers. So I think it would be so fascinating to explore what greatness could look like beyond that world of particular frames of knowing. I think that would be really cool. That's maybe beyond the scope of what you're doing. But I was just really struck by, half our history. It's not half our history. Like, it's 90% of our history just never gets constructed as great or noteworthy. But I think, if we could go back in history and talk to someone in an ancient Greek village to say, like, well, who would you trust, the most to take care of you in illness? Who has the most knowledge? Who has the most science, scientia? They would point to the village midwife. There's no question. So I just think it's interesting. I think it's interesting to kind of expand how we think about that piece. And also, I think it would be interesting for the Halifax Regional Municipality to reevaluate our position on public art, if we have one. That might be cool. Get some paintings of some good old gals down at City Hall. I don't know. Maybe we can make a motion.
Sounds good. Well, obviously, Joe,
You're singing my tune, Liz.
You've provoked a lot of thinking here, a lot of response,
Well,
which is great.
Can I just offer two thoughts?
Sure,
and I'm going to
sure.
send along another little video that Elizabeth might share just as we wrap up here. I think I've sent the right video. I hope I have. So that first collection of paintings included a woman called Marie Henriette Lejeune Ross, who was a traditional healer. She was Acadian, she was French, and she learned her healing from the Mi'kmaq. And you wouldn't believe the number of people who got in touch with me after I painted her. There's all these Rosses that know about this female pioneer who she inoculated an entire Cape Breton village, from whatever the epidemic was that was happening, smallpox, and so on. So, Liz, I think you're just spot on, and this repeat. I just have to say yes. I agree. Don't get me excited. I'm totally with you on that. I started off this project. I had a whole different website built. It was all around looking through a female lens, because I'm very conscious of the fact that we're talking about things, we look very much through a male lens. And in fact, I brought along, in case anybody's in the mood to read, this book is perfect. Such a great book. It's all the data on how the male is designed through on the world. Hannah, have you read it? Does that ring a bell? You're nodding. Anyway, it's the hard data on how the world is just a lens. Yeah. And it's fantastic. So, you know, it's nice to keep things in the, when you're talking art all the time, people think you can be a little flaky or too creative. I like to be able to go to the data and pull it up front. You know, hard evidence is always speaks pretty clearly. Elizabeth, can you share at some point that little video that I sent you?
So I can distribute it, or I can send it to members afterwards. I can't share it right now for two reasons. One is we are kind of supposed to pre-approve any material beforehand, and I also don't know how to get any sound through my computer to share it, but I can certainly make sure all the members are sent that video link after the meeting.
Okay, it's just about the hyperbolic plane and basically how male mathematicians felt for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years that it could not be represented physically. And then this woman that I got in touch with, who is living versus a historic figure. So she's a great woman to stand on my books, but she went home and crocheted a hyperbolic plane. And so if you look for hyperbolic plane and crocheting, you're going to see that story. It's a woman of experience. It's a great story. Sorry, I get so excited about this stuff.
You were just cutting out a little bit there. So, but I think we got the message, the crocheting and the hyperbolic plane. The other, I don't know if we have time, but yeah, I think we do. The other story that you've told is about Poppy Northcott and the scientist from Brazil.
Right.
Isn't that correct? That she was inspired by a picture of Poppy.
Yes. Do you want me to take a second, share that?
Yeah, sure.
So I reached out to Poppy Northcott and told her about the project, and she, the only woman, the first woman in mission control for NASA. So she is the key person who did the math that brought the men back from the moon. Lots of people involved, but she ended up sort of being elevated to this very particular post within mission control, and she was the only woman besides. So it's just a really, kind of iconic historic moment and a fabulous person to sort of reach out to in terms of the context of this project. But she tells a story about being the Brazilian consulate getting in touch with her and saying there's somebody wants to talk to you. And she said, well, I don't know anybody from this woman, Rosalind Perez, who got in touch with her and said, I just wanted to thank you. Rosalind is now the world expert in volcanoes anywhere, including planetary surfaces, so lunar surfaces, name the planet, find the volcano, the expert. And she went into STEM. She saw a picture of Poppy Northcott in mission control, and it just the penny dropped for her that this could be women's work. STEM could be women's work. And now she's this fantastically respected scientist. So it's a great story. Thanks, Jane, for thinking of that.
Which explains why Poppy Northcott immediately got on board, because she understood the power of visual images. So the other thing, we're just about ready to stop, but Pam, you were mentioning about statues. And I'm not the best person to talk about things in Halifax, but I believe there's 3 women statues down at the waterfront, right? That are where they kind of celebrate women there.
Yeah, I think my point was that we're not celebrating recognized women who have created, you know, and just accomplished a lot in the building this city. So,
Yeah.
you know, I think that that's something that we really need to do a better job of. And so that was my point. And I think, you know, Joe's really identifying, you know, these women who have just, you know, contributed so much to society. So
yeah. Okay, well, thank you
Yeah.
very much, Joe. I appreciate your time, and I think people have really provoked a good amount of discussion. So I think people have really enjoyed what you had to say. So hang in there with us if you'd like, or whatever. So again, thank you very much.
I'll mute myself and turn off the camera, and if you don't mind, I will continue to listen.
All right. Okay. So next item on the agenda is information items brought forward. And I don't think we have any there. And that brings us to reports discussion. And one of the items that we've listed there is in response to a question. I don't know, a couple of meetings ago, people were kind of asking, how do we decide on the agenda and so on. So I just wanted to kind of review with you how we actually come up with the agenda for the meeting, in case it's not quite clear to anybody. So as you probably know, the chairperson has the prerogative to determine the agenda for the meeting. But in my case, the chairperson I don't do this by myself. I do it in consultation with Elizabeth McDonald, who's always at all the meetings, with the vice chair, which is now Hannah, and with staff members. Bailey and Amy often are there. And so we put our heads together and come up with decisions about what should be on the agenda. And in terms of presentations, as you're aware, we do have lots of presentations like we just had today. And those ideas come from a variety of places. Again, I know Hannah has been one of the people that have suggested speakers who we've had. And in the past, committee members have made lots of suggestions for speakers who we've invited. And so generally, we would want these speakers or these presentations to align with our priorities for learning. So as you noticed in the last email I sent, that we were focusing for the last 2 meetings on our priority to increase the involvement of women in municipal affairs and in non-traditional employment. So if you think about that, that's the reason why we had all the counselors speak to us. That's the reason why Jo Napier was invited, because she's looking at non-traditional employment. And that's why today we'll also hear from Bailey, who will talk about campaign school for Indigenous women. So the speakers that we ask to come to our meetings are always people that we think can help us learn about the issues that we've identified for learning. There's another way that people can come to a meeting. They can ask to present to a committee. And this is done I guess more frequently with other committees than with ours. We're a new committee. So until people actually realize we're here, we're not going to have very many people knocking at the door asking to do presentations, but they could do that. And if they do that, there's a formal process for asking for time for presentations. So that's just a little background. Was there any comments or questions about, the only other thing I was going to say is just to remember that in December is when we start doing our work plan for the next year. And we set what we've done in the past, and there's no reason that we have to do it this way forever, but that's the process that I established when I became chair, was to have a brainstorming session where everybody brought forward their ideas about what are the issues of concern to women in the HRM. What should we be looking at? What should we be informing ourselves about? And try to come up with sort of some at least three general areas, and then possible speakers. So important thing is that you know that your contributions are really important. Your ideas, your suggestions are really important in that process, and your suggestions for speakers are really important too. I just want to encourage you, please, please, please never hesitate that if you think there's somebody that our committee should hear from, that you feed that information in through either through me or through Elizabeth, so that we get the opportunity to benefit from that. So any comments, questions, clarification needed? Good with that? Everybody's quiet? All right. Even Liz, you're even quiet?
When you explain it so clear, Jane, you leave me nothing to ask questions about.
Okay, so we're good? Yeah, we're good. And of course, there's little bumps along the way, and why we wouldn't necessarily expect that there wouldn't be any. All right, the next item on our agenda is our meeting schedule, and I hope you have that in front of you and have had a chance to look at it, because I just want to kind of go through the dates. Elizabeth is going to help us here, because Elizabeth is the person that kind of pulls it together and then puts it in front of us. So our typical meeting date is the first Thursday of every month, and our meeting time was 4 o'clock, but this year we moved it to 4:30 to 6:30, so the committee can decide whether the timing is appropriate. And then just having a look at some of the dates. So I note that January 11th is not the first Thursday of January; it's the second Thursday. And is that okay, Elizabeth? Because
yes.
Okay.
The reason is because the thinking behind that was everyone is kind of back in the
Sure.
kind of slowly coming back in the office the first week of the new year. So that's why we have the proposed first meeting date is January the 11th.
Yeah.
I believe if we go back to the beginning of 2023, the first meeting of 2023 was also held, I think it was January 12th or something
Sure.
like that.
Sure.
And
That's
the
what I
second
thought.
week- And I did just kind of want to provide a little bit more context, because I did send out a revised meeting schedule. So the dates right now, they have been changed as of yesterday, because for a few different reasons, but mainly due to the municipal election, is going to have a pretty significant impact on when we are able to meet. So because of that, it's only right now, September meetings can only be held up to the 9th, and October meetings are only if required, since the election will still be going on then, and then the swearing in ceremony isn't until November. So that is kind of, if anyone was wondering why if the meeting in October is if required, and why there's currently no meeting in November. That being said, if the committee is very keen to meet in November, we could look at a date. It's just that at this time we wouldn't be able to meet for the first 2 weeks, and then on the last week of November is the Nova Scotia Municipal Federation Conference, or Nova Scotia Municipal Conference.
Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities.
Federation of Municipalities. Thank you, Councillor Lovelace.
right. Yeah, so those dates that makes sense. The one date on there, Elizabeth, I didn't mention this to you before, but it's June 20th, which doesn't make sense. Shouldn't it be June 6th?
I'm just going to take a look at my calendar here, if you don't mind.
Sure. So June 20th is about the 3rd.
That may be because of FCM. So the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Conference would be happening during that first week
Okay.
And so we do have quite a number of counselors who attend that.
Okay.
Yes, and I've sat on the electing women to municipal government committee over the past year. So there's, generally quite a bit of excitement to go to FCM.
And that's the
So I'm just
first,
looking at the calendar here. It is because of FCM. And then I believe the reason that
Okay.
it was moved to June the 20th is there are 3 other committee meetings on Thursday, June the 13th, and there was
Sure.
overlap with the counselors that serve on those
Okay, okay,
committees.
perfect. I just wondered if it was a typo. Nope, it's
absolutely.
not a typo. It's that's the intention. Okay. And so if you're happy with these meeting dates, we could have a motion to approve the proposed meeting schedule, and keeping in mind that nothing is ever set in stone. If it has to be changed later, it can be done, but this gives us a roadmap. So is anybody prepared to move the acceptance of this proposed 2024 meeting schedule?
I can.
Hannah's going to do that. Liz, do you want to second that? Perfect. All those in favor, say aye or wave your hand. Opposed? Motion's carried. Okay. Which now brings us to Bailey. And Bailey is going to give us an update on the Indigenous Women and Two-Spirit Leadership Summit and Campaign School, which took place in September. So over to you, Bailey.
Well, we can't hear you, Bailey. Interesting. It looks like your audio's on. Oh, you're not muted. Oh, now you're muted. Now you're not muted. Still can't hear you. This is a funny one. No.
We still can't hear you for some reason.
No.
You might need to just jump out and then jump back in. That might reset your audio. Okay.
Could we, would you be agreeable, folks, if we went on to the next item with Amy giving her update while Bailey tries to solve her technology problems? You
Sounds
okay
good.
with that? Everybody's nodding. So Amy, can you proceed? Thanks.
Yes. Can you hear
Thank
me?
you. Yes, thank you.
Great. Yeah, hi everyone. Good to be with you here as always. Yeah, I thought that it might be nice just to give a short update about some of the things we've been working on in the Safe City and Safe Public Spaces program. One of the big beautiful things that has happened over the last couple of weeks is that we've had a new team member join us. Lindsay Mullen, who's here on the call with us, is the new. Oh,
when you buy a ticket, it's for today.
Councillor Lovelace, I think you're unmuted.
We can hear you, Pam. You need to mute.
We hear you buying tickets for all of us for something, something fun.
So we've had a new team member join us. So Lindsay has stepped into the role of program coordinator for the Safe City and Safe Public Spaces program. And Lindsay's here with us this evening. I thought it'd be a good chance for Lindsay to get a sense of what the committee does, the conversations that you folks are having here, and you folks to put a face to the name. So if you want to give a little wave, Lindsay. Great. So that's a great update. And a couple other things that I wanted to share with you folks. So as you folks know, we continue to facilitate women's safety assessments. 2 of the most recent ones were an assessment in Chebucto Road Park and one in collaboration with Councillor Cuddle along Herring Cove Road in Spryfield. And we have an upcoming assessment in November in and around the area of the George Dixon and central north of Halifax in collaboration with the community mobilization teams in Mulgrave Park and central north. I know that you folks have been interested in knowing more about some of the work that the municipality could be doing around commercial sexual exploitation of children and youth. And I think I may have mentioned at one point, maybe the early conversations of this, but we have confirmed now that over the next several months, we're going to be working with YWCA of Halifax on two small initiatives. The first is developing pilot training for municipal staff who are working with youth kind of at the grassroots level on the ground to build more skills in identifying commercial sexual exploitation and supporting youth who may be experiencing that. And so that's the one piece of the work. And then the second piece is a research brief that they're going to be developing based on a lot of the body of research that they've already done and the expertise that they bring on this issue around helping us understand where some of the key areas that we can focus on as a municipality in terms of preventing and responding to commercial sexual exploitation of children and youth. And then the final thing that I wanted to, share was we hosted a workshop in September it was focused on transit safety and gender responsive transit. We hosted two researchers who worked on a project called Understanding the Transit Needs of Women, which is a review of work across the country and trends across the country in terms of how women use transit and some of the barriers that they encounter in terms of accessing transit. And so they came here to Halifax and we gathered together a group of folks. We had many folks from several different teams in transit. We had some folks from planning and development, parks and recreation, diversity and inclusion, and the office of, or the African Nova Scotian Affairs Integration Office, Nova Scotia Status of Women, and then the IWK Mental Health and Addictions Health Promotion Team. So I wanted to highlight that because I know you folks also, as part of your priorities, thinking a lot about influencing the work that is happening across our departments and business units in the municipality. So yeah, that's all I have to share with you today.
Thank you, Amy. Any questions or comments for Amy? Any clarification needed?
I just want to apologize. I was chatting with my colleague here about tickets. Sorry about that, Amy.
Oh, that's okay, Councillor Lovelace. I hope you go into something cool.
Yeah, we're rooting for you. All right, Bailey, do you think we've got your audio thing solved?
Yes, I figured out what was wrong.
Oh, good.
Technology
Okay.
is not my friend today.
Oh, okay. Well, welcome. And back to you, Amy. Thank you very much for that presentation. I appreciate the update. And Bailey, over to you.
Thank you, Jane. So yeah, I just wanted to give an update on the Canadian Women in Leadership project that has been going through the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. So like I had said in the past meeting, HRM was able to obtain a grant from them to create Indigenous Women in Two-Spirit Leadership Summit and Campaign School with the goal of getting more women in Two-Spirit people interested in municipal government and interested in taking on leadership positions, both elected and non-elected.
Bailey, you're on mute again.
Yes, I am. One moment. Sorry about that. I'm happy to say that the event that took place on September 22nd went very well. We were able to have people from the community, such as Elder Marlene Companion, come and be with us. People such as the now no longer the Indigenous Service Advisor for HRM, but the past Indigenous Services Advisor from HRM come and speak. Lisa Blackburn came and spoke about her experiences within municipal government, and we had Ian from the clerk's office also talk about civics in a very basic way so that everyone would have similar understandings about how municipal government works and what the municipal government is responsible for and the different things that they do and the various committees and boards that exist. The feedback from it was fantastic, both from participants and from our community partners. So we were, as well as FCM, we were partnered with the Mi'kmaq Circle of Hope and the Nova Scotia Native Women's Association. Our partners hope to be able to find ways to do similar events in the future and even include the African Nova Scotian community to have more diverse women and Two-Spirit people and gender diverse people running within municipal government. The participants really appreciated the day to be able to be in a space that wasn't just a general space, but a space that was made for them with their cultural values and interests in mind. It ended up being quite a beautiful and meaningful experience for everyone. So that was the update that I wanted to share.
Thank you, Bailey. Any questions or comments for Bailey? Pam.
I just want to say thank you. I thought the staff just did a fantastic job. It was, as Bailey said, it was so well received. People, it was real eye-opening. I mean, at one point, Ian had put up a chart where you have local government responsibilities next to provincial responsibilities, and then underneath itemized responsibilities that were shared. And so you could hear the gasp in the room, like, oh, that's why it's so complicated to get some of these stuff, some of these issues resolved. And so it was such a great event. And I just want to again say thank you to staff because this was a highlight for this year, absolutely, and look forward to the next one.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor.
Bailey, I've just a question for you. So I was curious about how the participants were recruited. Were they recruited through your your participating organizations? And then I was curious about how many people actually came.
So our participants were recruited not through the organizations, but using them to get the message out. So there were posts on social media that were shared around. We had leave behinds for places like the Mi'kmaq Native Friendship Center and throughout the North American Indigenous Games and various events going on. So it was the general public who was being recruited. And then many people luckily shared the information with other people through social media so that we could have a turnout. I think at the end of the day, we were around 35 people. I would have to double check that, but
Wow.
It was absolutely fantastic and more than I could have hoped for, honestly.
Yeah. Wow, that's quite when you think of it, quite an impact could happen through 35 individuals who show up to participate. That's amazing. Way to go. Well, thanks for doing that. That's great. Any other comments or? Good. All right, let's move on to our Councillor Lovelace. Wow, you're just got more work to do here. So item 9.3.1 is you were just going to give us a little bit of some of the highlights of the conversation that took place at our last meeting.
Yes, thank you. So, keeping with the theme of elections, at the last meeting, we had an excellent conversation. It was lovely to have everybody come to City Hall and have a conversation with City Council women who were very open about their experiences, both deciding to run for council. Some of our folks, some of our councillors had run previously, didn't get elected. Some were, provincial. And so we just had a wonderful opportunity to kind of go around the room and speak honestly about our experiences and have a better understanding, I think, for what we go through to get our name on the ballot, to actually run a campaign. Then we talked about the nitty-gritty of building a team, the donations, the financial challenges. And so I'll get to that with 10.11, which is definitely something that we need to discuss. But the other thing, was having two counselors, previous counselors, and previous MLA and a current MLA. So Laura Lee Nickel, who was a counselor, and has mentored many of us on council, is now an MLA, and she offered some great insights. Same with Counselor Becky Kent, who has been in both houses. So it's been really nice, I think, to have that. The video is up, so should you wish to watch the conversation, it was like a coffee table conversation. This is very casual, and thank you, Jane, for spearheading this and bringing us all together in person. And we also had members of the public who came in, which was really nice to listen to it, and one young woman from my district, actually in Hammonds Plains, she showed up to listen and get inspired and understand a little bit more, of the details of how you actually get to the point where your name is on the ballot, and then how do you run, and then what's it like once you're there and doing the job. So like I said, there's it's a great video that you can watch, and really appreciate the opportunity. And I hope that we do that again, because not all women were able to attend. So it was great.
Great. I think it will grow. I mean, I do hope that the event's repeated next year. I won't be here to just make that happen, but I hope that it does happen. One of the things that I was interested to hear was the fact that, I mean, obviously women on council get together on committees and council meetings, and there's always work to be done, things to do. It's a very busy, challenging position. But this was just a chance to sit down and talk to each other and get to know each other a little bit and hear each other's stories. And I think some of those stories they hadn't heard before. So Hannah or Liz, I don't know if you want to make any comments about how you felt about the meeting, but if you do, I'm happy to hear them.
I had a great time. I won't put Hannah on the spot. I'll save you, Hannah. You can pay me back later. I had a great time, and I was really struck. I said it at the time, and I'll say it again now. I was really struck by just sort of the range of approaches to democracy, like the range of approaches to interaction with the democratic process. We had some counselors who were like, I don't know, I never thought it would happen to me, and then it did. We had some counselors who identified that they sort of felt called upon to do it, like this work is here and there's nobody else is going to do it, so I better do it. We have some counselors who were like, I don't know, seemed fun, so I thought I'd try it. And then, learned on the job and figured it out, which I think is sort of the essence of the democratic process. And then we had some counselors who identified, this was something that I feel like I was meant to do, and that it was something that was a long-term goal and somewhere where I really thought I could have an impact. And I think it's so important to have that diversity of approaches to participation. And I thought it was really wonderful that those were all highlighted, because it shows the diversity of people and approaches that can come together.
I concur.
There you go. Okay, thanks a lot. So again, thank you, Councillor Lovelace, for that little update, and thank you for being there last meeting and for your part in sharing and for your part in leading council. We appreciate it very much. So speaking of council, next item on the agenda is a regional council update, and I'm not sure if Councillor Kent sent something to you, Councillor Lovelace, or whether we have a report. Maybe we don't have a report.
Jane, Lindsay's hand was up.
Pardon me.
Sure.
Oh yeah, thank you. First, I just wanted to say thank you for welcoming to the meeting. I've learned lots today, but is there a link to that meeting that we can watch if it was recorded?
Oh, yes, I'll put it in the chat. It's
great. Thank you.
So there actually wasn't an actual video of the meeting, but the audio recording of the meeting can be requested through the clerk's office. We had, when the meeting was first planned, talked about having the meeting in the Harbor East Marine Drive community or chambers, but unfortunately, just with timing of other meetings, we weren't able to live broadcast the meeting through YouTube. But That would have been great, but the recording is available.
That's
Oh,
great.
I'm
Thank you.
sorry, Lindsay. I thought that we had it online. Sorry about that.
So just to clarify, Lindsay, when we have meetings on, like we're having now on Zoom, those are recorded and those are posted on the HRM Women's Advisory Committee website. But in that case, because it was in person and we don't have the technology yet, so we have just an audio recording from that room. And thank you, Sonia, for helping me acknowledge Lindsay. Now back to Councillor Lovelace. Do we have a report?
I haven't received one. Elizabeth, did you get one?
I did not. No.
Okay.
Okay.
Next time we'll have a report from the.
So I'll just let folks know very
Okay.
briefly.
Sure.
So we did review our housing and homelessness strategy at council. That did move forward. This is a pressing issue for us. Snow fell yesterday. We want to make sure that people are getting shelter as soon as possible. We have just heard that the province is opening up a 50-bed winter shelter. And so, that's extremely timely, but we have over 200 people living in tents. So council will need to make a decision sooner than later as far as how we can support those folks. Because it's getting colder. And if any of you have been watching legislative TV at the Nova Scotia legislature, you will know that the opposition parties have been raising this every chance that they can about the fact that we need shelter for these people who don't have it. And many of them are working. They're working full-time jobs. They're just unable to afford rent. So in addition to that, council, as I mentioned earlier, we had the renaming of Nora Bernard Street, which is wonderful. We also have an awful lot of work that's going on for me in particular in my district with regards to emergency preparedness, wildfire, egress, looking at ways to create emergency exits and so on, and doing a better job, but quite frankly, with Halifax Fire and Department of Natural Resources to ensure that communities themselves have the tools and the resources and the knowledge to become fire smart communities. So that, we've got staff who are traveling throughout the districts, meeting with people to talk to them about the fire risk in their communities and on their property. In addition to that, we've just closed the comments for regional plan. That regional plan commenting for phase 4 is over. It ended on October 31st. Staff are now compiling all of the comments and the reporting, which will come back to council to review how we move forward with regards to our growth plan. Where do we grow? Where do we build? How do we do that in a sustainable manner and ensure that we have the infrastructure that our communities need in order to grow effectively and safely? So that's top of mind, as well as the fact that the hazard, risks, and vulnerability assessments, you may have seen engagement sessions in your communities. And so we've been doing that over the last few months to get people out to talk about what kind of hazard, what sort of vulnerability exists in their community. Certainly with seniors who maybe live alone, folks who are, in wheelchairs, for example. They have the electric wheelchairs. You can lose power for 3 days. Your wheelchair is not it's not useful because you can't power it up without power. So there's a lot of work that's happening to do those very minute details as far as understanding what the risks are in our communities across HRM. But yeah, so there's lots going on. I'm sorry I didn't get a report from Councillor Kent, but I'm sure at the next meeting we can have a much more detailed account. Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to say thank you for that. And our next item is item 10.1.1, and this is a motion that has arisen out of the October meeting. So Pam, you can go ahead and.
Okay, I'm going to read this very quickly before people leave the meeting. So if you could just hang on for 30 seconds. I move that the Women's Advisory Committee recommend the Executive Standing Committee direct the Chief Administrative Officer to provide a staff report exploring the creation of a rebate program for municipal campaign contributions during regular or special elections held in the Halifax Regional Municipality The report should include an overview of the legislative and budgetary framework required to enable the proposed program. I am going to make a friendly amendment to my motion that clarifies that this rebate program for municipal campaign contributions is for mayor and councillor candidates. And so I so move, and I'm looking for a seconder.
I can second.
Hannah, second that.
Thank you, Hannah. So
yes.
very briefly, I've got 35 seconds before you leave. But the reason that we're talking about this right now is primarily because both the federal and provincial campaigns, candidates during those election campaigns have the opportunity to issue charitable tax receipts. Halifax Regional Municipality is a charity. We do have a charitable tax number. We could have this opportunity like other municipalities in Ontario, for example. So it's just a matter of us getting the report and doing the, the exploratory work, recommending to the executive committee that they do this. It has been successful for other municipal units. In Ontario, we don't have this in Nova Scotia at this time. But that being said, it really is a barrier when people are, especially women, are asking for donations and they don't have the opportunity to issue a charitable tax receipt. It's not as easy to access those funds. And as we know, campaigns can be very expensive. And candidates under the financial rules for elections, candidates don't have the opportunity just to finance their entire campaign unless they have a really low, a lower budget campaign. So anyway, I hope that you'll support this, and I'd like to call for the question.
Sorry, I just wanted to interrupt briefly. I misunderstood. I thought both Sonia and Hannah had to leave at 6, but I think it might just be Hannah. So we are all good for quorum. If anyone wants to ask questions, or Jane, that's up to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any questions or comments for Councillor Lovelace? Liz.
I just have a couple questions. I just want to make sure I understand the motion. So the motion is to get a report on A, the feasibility, and B, the implications of adopting this rebate program. Okay. And do we have a ballpark on how much staff time we think we're going to spend on it?
Because there's already programs functioning right now, and staff have already done the landscape review in order to work with me on the motion. Yeah. I'm going to say that it's not a whole lot of work since this program is already up and running elsewhere in the country.
All right. And so then they commission the report, and then the report goes to the executive standing committee, and then the motion is made there to adopt this rebate program or not?
No, the executive committee wouldn't do that. The executive committee would then send that to council. Okay. And so as it goes through that administration process, and I'm glad you raised that, Liz, because it goes from an advisory committee to an executive committee of council. And then if approved, it would go to council for consideration. It may just sit at executive committee and not move forward to council.
Okay. And sorry for my last little bit of tire kicking. We're all very comfortable that this is a gendered issue. Like, we have data to say that this probably impacts women and people outside the gender binary disproportionately when compared to men.
Yeah. So one of the studies that have been done, well, FCM has done numerous studies, as well as the Dalhousie University and political scientists there. Basically what they've done is they've looked at how much money women have raised compared to how much money men have raised. Part of that is how many women actually run and get involved in campaigns. We do know that having, and it's not just gendered. It's looking at those who are less likely to be seen as a politician, right? But having the opportunity to support people by issuing tax receipts to candidates would not only show the seriousness of local government candidates, because the municipality would be investing in this program, but it would also elevate the conversation, I think, for women and minority groups, people who are not typical see themselves in politics right now, that they would have an opportunity to say, okay, well, this is one more opportunity that I can take advantage of, that I could use to bolster my opportunity to join Halifax Council.
All right, good enough for me. Sold.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, that's just how again, it's already functioning in Ontario. So thanks, Liz. Great questions.
Any other comments or questions? Ready for the question? All those in favor, say aye or wave your hand.
Everyone could say aye, that would be great, just since I know not everyone's video is on.
Okay.
Aye.
I see Sonia's just sent us a message in favor, so I'll take that as an aye. None, I'll ask her, any opposed? Hearing nothing, motion is carried. Way to go. Thank you, Councillor Lovelace, for pulling that together so quickly. I feel
No problem.
really,
Thank you, Madam Chair.
really positive about that, because it came out of our meeting last October, and I'm very happy to be able to for you to share with the women councillors who showed up and told us about the issue, that we've been able to maybe inch this along a little bit. Okay, I think that brings us just to the date of our next meeting. And Elizabeth, I'm not sure why it says to be determined. Is it
So
not?
there actually is not. I know you mentioned a December meeting earlier. There actually is in the approved meeting schedule for this year. The meetings only went until November. There wasn't a December meeting on the schedule. That being said, the committee can certainly meet in December if the committee wishes to.
Well, I would recommend it. And the reason I would recommend it is because generally that's the meeting we have used for planning for the next year.
We absolutely can add a December date to the meeting schedule, just on the approved meeting schedule from, I think it was probably this past January, there wasn't a December date included.
So the December first Thursday in December is December 7th. Anybody got any reason why we shouldn't have a meeting on December 7th?
I'm not available, but that's okay. Do you think maybe we could just do this offline and just do a poll to get everybody's perspective? I know
that's a good idea.
Yeah, I think Hannah's left.
Sorry, I'll just mention December 7th at sundown is the first candle of Hanukkah. So maybe better not to have it on a religious holiday.
Sure. Okay, so why don't we do a little poll?
Yeah,
we can do that. Elizabeth, please.
Yep, absolutely. I can send something around tomorrow.
To determine whether or not we meet on December 7th. Yeah. All right. We have come to the end of our meeting, end of our agenda. Lindsay, once again, welcome. We're glad to have you with us. We look forward to seeing you at other meetings. And
thank you. Yeah.
Bailey and Amy, thank you for your presentations. Much appreciated. I don't know if Joe's still here, but if she is, thanks to her. And thanks, Pam, Councillor Lovelace, for all your input to this meeting. It's been great. So, anybody want to move and adjourn?
Madam Chair?
We're done. Okay. Thanks again. And enjoy the rest of your evening. And perhaps we'll see you in November or in December, but if not, we'll see you in January.
Thank you.
Okay. Good night.
Thank you. Have a good night.